Alrighty, welcome to the Lama Jigme Dog and Pony Show. And what we're going to do tonight is an extract. Typically this would be the first lesson in a first semester. And the goal is to give you specific tools to deal with crap. Because shit happens. Sometimes circumstances turn to crap. Our bodies are in pain sometimes. Our emotions are in turmoil sometimes. We need tools that work when the fit hits the fan. Because if they don't, if our spiritual system doesn't work during difficult times, it's worthless. And it's not worth practicing. And you just crumple it up and find something that does work. Now I have to pick up my papers. And let's do so in a dignified manner. Because I'm all about the dignity, folks. All dignity, all the time. So, this is being taught as the first of many lessons. And so if you like this, I think at the bottom of page 4, there's a link so you can get in touch with me. And we can set up more lessons. If not, no hard feelings. But bearing that in mind, we're not going to go over everything in minute detail, because if we did, your head would explode, and then Steve would never get his cleaning deposit back. We can't have that. So, this good-looking gent on the front of your practice text is a line drawing of the Buddha of Compassion, known by many names. In China, known as Quan Shi Yin Pusa, or Kuan Yin. In India, as Avalokiteshvara. And in Tibet as Chenrezig. I like that. 3 syllables, much shorter than Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. That's a mouthful. So, real quickly, let's just follow along with me as I recite the opening invocation 3 times. Eternally I go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. For the sake of every living being, may I accomplish Chenrezig. Eternally I go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. For the sake of every living being, may I accomplish Chenrezig. Eternally I go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. For the sake of every living being, may I accomplish Chenrezig. Let's turn to page 2. And we can play with the sheets so that page 2 is on our left and page 3 is on our right, just as if we were to open a book or a practice text. And for those of you who've downloaded this at home, I encourage you to actually print this out double-sided, triple punch it, and stick it in a report cover. That way it's durable and it serves you well. So looking at the top of page 2, it says Beginning Collection of Practices, which is a good place to start. Beneath that it says Head Cauldron's Union of Awareness and Letting Go. So this is, as I mentioned, just a portion of a larger practice called Buddha's 3 cauldrons. First cauldron is your belly. Second cauldron is your chest. Third is your head. I'm not going to slap my head. Something might rattle and I'd be very embarrassed if it did. And typically I begin with the 3rd cauldron practice. The first cauldron practice can be very, very peaceful. In fact, some people can abuse it because they just like getting stoned off their own body. But a side effect of that can be occasional crankiness. So the best way to prevent that from happening is to practice the 2nd cauldron right afterwards, which unleashes heart bliss that comes from devotion and compassion and love. However, the side effect of that can be occasional nervousness. And so the antidote for that is to do the 3rd cauldron. So by teaching the 3rd cauldron first, it prevents all the other side effects. And then by learning the 2nd cauldron second, and then once you've already learned the first cauldron, it prevents any side effects. And so if it sounds like I'm conspiring to set you up for success, you're on to me. Now, that makes me controversial. Not most teachers will set you up for frustration and failure. It's very ugly, but in most religious systems, there's this elitism that says, man, what's tough for me? This is going to be tougher for you because I'm special. That's malarkey. Who needs that? You know, I want it to be as easy for my students as possible. Not because I'm a good guy, because I just have a low threshold of other people suffering. You know, your suffering annoys me. How dare you? We're going to remedy that right now because too much for me to bear. So, I'm a fast-talking Jew. If I start talking too fast, raise your hand, let me know. Try to go white bread, if at all possible. So by show of hands, how many people here, you know, in elementary or junior high or high school studied music, you know, played an instrument? Any band geeks in the house?
For a couple of years.
Couple of years? It's been said that in the West, musical notation was invented by a Catholic monk. And this was, I suspect, in the Middle Ages. Before then, you could only play what you'd invented or what you'd been taught, which really limited a musician's options, and it made, you know, a symphony completely out of the question. So just as musical notation revolutionized music, contemplative notation has the same potential for personal development. Traditionally, people spend decades learning all kinds of contemplative or meditative tricks. And the whole idea of contemplative notation is to speed up the learning curve so that in weeks you could be accomplishing things that some people take lifetimes to accomplish. Because suffering sucks, why prolong the process? Why add to your suffering with an extra heaping of frustration or inadequacy? People come to a teacher because they're unhappy. And people don't come to a teacher because life's perfect just the way it is. They come to a teacher because they're unhappy. And they've viscerally realized that they're a cranky bastard, they're miserable, and they're floating in a vast, infinite ocean of other miserable bastards. That's what we call the first noble truth. So why add to that misery with reduced self-esteem and increased frustration? I can see no reason for it. Who's the inconsiderate bastard whose watch is going up? That's what I want to know. Oh, it's 7 o'clock. Time to meditate. So you'll notice to the left, in small print it says in breath, right here for those of you playing at home. And by the way, if you're watching this home, why haven't you stopped it and downloaded it yet? You're being very naughty. No, go push pause and download the text. Oh my God, what is wrong with you? So it says to the left in small print, it says in breath. And so you just kind of are able to intuit that whatever comes to the right of that, you're going to mentally, silently recite. Beneath that, it says recite. And so you pretty much know that whatever comes to the right of that, you're going to verbally recite. Now, another dead giveaway is that that first line is written in italics, which means recite it mentally or just read it. It's the same thing. People have come to me and said,